everybody. Welcome to another Facebook Live. Thank you for joining me. And if you're new to my Facebook page live or the YouTube channel, hey everybody, welcome to the Facebook Live tonight. We have a great show. If you're new to my Facebook Live or to the YouTube channel, welcome. I always appreciate it. If you think somebody might want to know about this information we're going to talk about, please feel free to share it. I am Patty Dorito. I am the owner and founder of Holistic Healing Atlanta. And part of the mission of Holistic Healing is to incorporate the body, the mind, and soul so people can live vibrantly, be the best version of themselves, and live healthy and balanced. Tonight, I have a topic that's relevant to all of us, and that is our attachment style. So whether you're married or single, we all have attachment styles, and it's important for all of us to realize what our own is and why we do what we do. So this theory of attachment has been scientifically researched since the 50s, and it helps us to understand why we behave in a certain way, particularly in relationships and specifically with our romantic relationships. So like if you're finding yourself or your spouse holding back in marriage, why is that? Do you feel emotionally safe in your marriage? Do you get anxious about what the other person is doing? Or do you shut down? Do you feel understood? So if you're feeling stuck and in the same place in your relationships, whether it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, just your friends, maybe understanding how you and the other person can attach, how the other person attach will help you feel more secure in your relationships. So as we move into the show, if you have any questions, you can write them into the comments, and then we will get to it at the end. So tonight, I'm really excited. I have a very special guest. You're going to just love her. Her name is Caitlin Byrne, and she is a clinical mental health counselor. She earned her master's from Richmond Graduate University in Atlanta in 2017. She served a year in private practice, primarily with teenagers and their families. And then she took a year to serve in Cambodia with the anti-slavery NGO called International Justice Mission. She currently serves at MAR, which is a long-term residential addiction treatment facility. And she works with the families, the individuals, and does group counseling for men in recovery. She is a native to Atlanta, and she loves the Braves baseball. Please welcome my dear friend, Caitlin Byrne.
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Patty, for having me today.
Yeah, of course. It's great to have you. So Caitlin, we just thought we would just talk back and forth a little bit. So what is attachment, and why do you see it's an important topic, or why is this important to you?
Yeah, so I got really interested in attachment because it's so foundational to us as human beings. It's a theory based on, emotional regulation, as well as just interpersonal relationships. And we are all in relationships, every single one of us. Some that come and go, some that are more permanent and long-term. So this has just become so foundational to understanding exactly what you're saying, how we have different coping styles, different ways that we interact in our relationships, why we do what we do. This just helps us to understand our behaviors. So it's pretty much just foundational, and have found it very helpful in practice as a starting point with my clients that I work with.
Yeah. So sort of the experts, Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby, have described attachment as a deep and enduring emotional bond that connects one person to another across time and space. Mm-hmm. And while we're doing that, I mean, it's important to know that we're hardwired to love and be loved. Mm-hmm. So according to John Bowlby, infants have a universal need to seek close proximity with their caregiver, particularly when under stress or threatened.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that, we all, like you're saying, we all have this need for these bonds. And that starts as infants. We don't even know that like we're not asking for it verbally, but we need it. We know we need that security. We know we need to be cared for. And the way that we form those attachments is different for every single one of us, you know, because of where we grow up culturally, what type of family we grow up in. You know, some of my clients are tired of talking about childhood things, but that's really where we have to go with attachment to start understanding the behaviors now. You know, how were your needs met when you were younger? You know, and John Bowlby totally, you know, just embraced this. Even back to the Stone Age times, he recognized, you know, children had to attach to survive. It was a survival skill that we learned very early on.
Right. You know, and it's very cool because there's one of the founding people of the attachment theory is Mary Ainsworth, and she did a study called Stranger Situation, and she put a mother, a baby, and then a tester in a room, and then the mother would leave the room, and they observed what the baby did when the mother left, and then the mother was only gone a few minutes, and then the mother came back, and again they watched the baby and the reaction. So you know, the secure baby was able to be soothed, you know, because they don't like when mommy leaves. And this was done from age 9 months to 18 months. Those were the babies. So the secure baby was able to be soothed very quickly. Mm-hmm. The anxious, and we're going to talk about the styles, the baby whined or pushed away the mother. And then the avoidant baby had little interest, and they didn't even care whether mother came back or not. So,
right, they came back in the room. Yeah, and it gave, you know, when you look at that study and when you can watch it, you know, the experiments that happened, you know, it's all in this effort to meet the needs of the child, emotional needs. That's the important part, is how were the emotional needs met and regulated, and how are we taught, but also because when we have those basic emotional needs met, as well as our needs for food and sleep and love and different things, we have more of a security to explore and to see what else is out there and to know we're going to be okay.
Right, right. Yeah. So let's just jump into the 3 basic styles, and I'm just going to give a quick overview of the 3 styles. So you have a secure attachment. So a secure attachment is where people or babies feel comfortable with the intimacy. They're warm and loving. They feel safe and secure. Particularly a baby feels like they can go into the world and navigate it. Mm-hmm. So a secure 5-year-old can get on the school bus outside of COVID, get on the bus and not cry. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a secure child. Mm-hmm. An anxious style, they're preoccupied with the other person, what they're doing, and, you know, is mom going to be there or not be there? Is my romantic partner going to be there or not? Is my friend going to be there or not? Mm-hmm. And then we have the avoidant, where they minimize closeness, and they also equate intimacy with loss of independence, and they push people away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just start with the first one, with the attachment. This is the ideal. Now, the studies that I read say that at least 50% of the world have secure attachment styles. Caitlin, do you find 50% a good number that have this?
Yeah, I think that's where I have to look back and see that it's the foundational. You know, did they start in this way, and then other life circumstances have caused them to, you know, maybe be more anxious or other mental health things. So yeah, it's hard for me to kind of, the people who walk in my door, to know you have a secure attachment. But it is majority of people do, that they do have this security in and of themselves in their interpersonal relationships, to go and to explore and to discover who they are, while knowing they are supported and they have, you know, they have a place to go back to get their interpersonal needs met, to get their emotional needs met. So on one hand, I am surprised it's 50%, but on another, I'm like, of course, I don't think our world would, you know, be able to survive if we didn't have more of that.
Right. Right. Yeah. So the secure attachment style, the person has healthy boundaries, they're fluid in their relationships, they're comfortable in the world, they're comfortable with their relationships and social engagements.
Yeah. And one thing that I love about, you know, recognizing the secure attachment too, is that they're not as immediately impacted by the negative themes in the world and the negative cues in the world. You know, they have an ability to listen and to take that in and to learn about it, as opposed to having an immediate emotional, intense reaction that they're not even like, where did that come from? But that they're able to respond to the needs of their community, their romantic relationships, their children, in just a very nurturing, warm, loving way, as opposed to an avoidant way. Or, well, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're able to engage in that, and not get so immediately worked up by the negative cues.
Right. All right. So the next question is, well, how does a person get a secure attachment? And, you know, I want to also say that, you know, even if you were really attuned to your child's emotional needs, sometimes there are people that are wired, that are a little bit, they're more sensitive, they feel more things. And so I don't want anybody to walk away from this conversation thinking, I ruined my child, because, you know, I've seen people, particularly when children are on the spectrum, so the autistic spectrum. So, you know, they have an avoidant attachment style, and it's not because they had a cold mother or their mother wasn't attuned, because I know some great moms. But so anyway, I just want to put that caveat out there.
Right. Yeah. And that we don't, and for parents as well, is especially because this is being formed before your child has language, that you have a basic idea of what a child's needs are, but even that child can't express that to you just then. So I think it is, you know, we got to give some parents some grace here to know that, like, it's not possible that you are going to meet every need of your child. But as you attune and show up, how are you showing up in the moments that you can, you know, that you are going to them in their emotional need.
Right.
And it just looks different for every family. Yeah.
Right. So to develop that, the caregiver has to be attuned to the child's emotional needs and create a safe environment. And then this is important. It's got to be consistent. And I'm just as what you just said, good enough care. You know, because parents aren't perfect. They're tired. They've got other things on their mind. And then being attentive and affectionate to their children.
Yeah. The consistency is a good thing to point out. And it's not just that every time they cry, you enter in the same way, or every time they get a boo-boo, or every time they're happy that you attend to them the same way. But it's part of that, just showing up and engaging with that, you know, and entering into their emotional state with them. Not that you have to start crying too, but just kind of what happened, you know, like kind of approaching them with some care and some intention to seek why it is that they're acting the way that they are.
Yeah. So if you're looking at children to see if they have a secure attachment, some of the things are they're safe to go and explore the world. They can go to school and they can meet new friends, and you know, that's one thing. They can interact with other children well. They trust people, and then they have emotional resiliency and they have emotional regulation.
Right. Yeah, the ability to understand in the circumstance and the environment if their reaction is appropriate. You know, is this an appropriate time to laugh when we're watching something sad on TV? Like, is this an appropriate time to grieve when, you know, everyone else is joyful? Just kind of, they have an emotional regulation to be able to know if the circumstances, if their response is appropriate.
Right. And I think also, like, just if they're very emotional children and they don't know how to, like, calm themselves down, they just, like, scream, or that's you know, they're able to, a secure child can kind of go, I don't like that. Okay.
Yeah. Even before we have language, we start to do this, you know. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I love, because all this stuff is really foundational, as you said, and it's formed way before we're able to think and feel and say what we are feeling and needing.
And I think even for parents as well, the way you demonstrate your own coping skills and your own emotional regulation, just with a child in the room, even if it's not directly towards them, the way they see you respond to certain situations can help with their secure attachment as well.
Yeah. It's interesting because I had a client once that she used to bring her toddler with her. The baby was probably about 15 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And the baby would be playing with some toys that I put on the floor. And then if the mother started crying, the baby stopped, looked at her mom, went over to where the tissues were and brought a tissue over to the mom because she knew that she picked something up.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't know what the mother was saying.
Yeah.
And I just thought that's a good demonstration of just how children pick up things.
Yeah. And how you can go and the child can give the tissue and then go back to playing. You know, you're okay, I'm okay. I can keep exploring. I can keep discovering. I can keep, dreaming and finding these and playing. That's good.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And the baby doesn't start crying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then with an adult, a secure attachment is going to be a confident, balanced person who can give and receive love. Mm-hmm. Now, I would say across the board, a lot of my clients can give love, but where they fall down is receiving it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is why we are probably surprised that there are 50% of people are secure attachments, and why it's important for us to look at this with our clients, because they come into our office because there's tension. Something's not right in their life. So they're coming in an emotionally tense, heightened, dysregulated state. So we've got to remind them of if they are securely attached, remind them of that. Like, no, you have coping skills, you have the abilities. You do know how a securely attached adult knows how to communicate expectations, knows how to own their own feelings while listening to another person's without just taking on another person's feelings. I think too, you said it before, they probably have some good boundaries, but they're also able to respond to the other person's needs. Their partner or, the person that they're in relationship with, they're able to respond to their needs. But then in return, ask for what they need as well, which is hard for a lot of our clients.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. So the next attachment style is the anxious. Yeah. And sometimes you might see the word ambivalent, but I'm grouping them into three. So the next one is the anxious style. And, for the baby, the caregiver is off and on. They're not consistent. Maybe they attend to the baby and sometimes they're not even really caring what's going on. So they're inconsistent and attuning to what that child needs.
Yeah. And there's also, a lot of circumstances, what is the home environment the person, the child is being brought up in, who is the primary caregiver for this person, and how often are they interacting with that caregiver, to be able to, I work primarily with addicts. So they're struggling with alcoholism or drug addiction. And a lot of my clients who show up with an anxious attachment in their romantic relationships as adults, which I see in both the spouses, the one who's in treatment and the one who's not in treatment, they both can have a lot of anxiety and a lot of anxious attachment. But when my client talks about, their experience growing up, they have a little bit more of an anxious attachment when they grew up in a home where addiction was also prevalent, because there was an inconsistency. They didn't know if mom was going to be drunk when they got home, or they didn't know if mom was going to be nice and sweet, and not knowing what they were going to walk into, that can get them anxious when they're getting off the school bus. That can get them, just feeling, different things as they're coming home. They're not knowing what to expect when they come home. Like, will I eat a warm meal or, have to fend for myself today, that kind of stuff. So,
yeah. So, as they are a little bit older, you're going to see, well, whether they're a child or not, they're going to be clingy and they're going to be needy. So clingy as a child, they're going to be whiny and hanging on and wanting. An adult, where they're anxious, they might like the way they whine is they might text their person, their friend, their spouse, their 100 times. Well, where are you? What are you doing right now? And just, so
yeah. And there's a constant need of approval. Like we talked about with the secure, the child can go to the mother or can receive from the mother or the father, and then continue to go on and explore and play by themselves. An anxious attachment child is going to constantly need to know, Mom, is this okay? Am I doing this right? Is there, are you approving of what I'm doing? Am I doing this well? Am I, they're going to want that need for approval a little more often, or they're going to want to be in the same space with mom all the time when they're playing. They might just want to be sure, like, or dad. Sorry, I keep saying mom, but dads, you're part of this too. Wanting to be in the same space, with you, just to be more safe, know that they're okay and you're okay and they're doing things right.
Right. And they push really hard to be together a lot. And if their partner leaves, they feel a lot of anxiety, stress, they withdraw. But when the person comes back, now they're angry because they left. They felt abandoned for that bit of time.
Yes.
And disappointed by the other person.
Yes. And I see this so much with my clients, because I work, at a men's center. So when the husbands go away to treatment, the wives start missing them, and they're like, wait, what? They have formed this anxious attachment together of, wait, where's my husband? I miss him. But then they remember, oh wait, I'm angry at him. And actually, like all these things have happened, but they flip-flop a lot, which can be just an addicted relationship as well, or a codependent relationship, not necessarily talking directly about their attachment. But with that client, I would go back and say, let's talk about your childhood. Let's talk about where you're seeking your security and where you're seeking your need for approval or your emotional regulation. Are you able to do that apart from your spouse while they're seeking their own treatment? Vice versa.
And it's really easy for partners, spouses, boyfriend to blame the other person. Because if I just blame you, then I don't have to own anything. It's all about you. If you weren't an addict, or if you weren't such a wicked witch of the West, I wouldn't have to be drinking. So it's all blame too.
Yeah. I think the other thing I see a lot in adults with anxious attachment is a pretty intense, like, negative self-view. And they'll often over emote to a particular situation in order to receive comfort and support, and to get that attention. And that, when they're acting out of that anxious attachment that they have.
If I scream louder, I'll get some attention.
Yeah. Or if I'm overly happy, going back to what we were talking about before, of even the knowing the appropriateness of the response in a situation, right? And an anxious attachment style may over emote in any situation in order to get the attention and the approval that they're seeking. Yeah.
Anything else before we move on to the third one, Caitlin?
No, I think we're good.
So the next one is the avoidant attachment style. And that is when the caregiver is unavailable or unresponsive or insensitive to the child's needs, or hostile, or makes fun of, or belittles, or critical of the child. So like sometimes what happens in a family is, say the mother is depressed, postpartum depression. The mother can't show up. She doesn't know how to show up. And if somebody isn't doing that for the child, that child will learn to soothe themselves and say, forget everything else.
Their independence becomes so important to them, because it's, again, they learned how to soothe themselves. And so if anyone starts to encroach on that, or they feel a need to need another person, that feels unsafe. My safety comes from my ability to soothe myself, and not need others.
I've also come across parents who don't really like being a parent, or they don't really like that particular child. And so they just kind of distance themselves from the child. Sad.
Yeah, and we see this a lot in homes where there was significant trauma, where maybe there
Yes.
was abuse, maybe somebody passed away at an early age, or there could be some significant trauma in the history in their growing up time
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. I think too, a lot of times if there's a lot of anger in the home,
Hmm.
kids just say, you know what, I'm just going to take care of me.
Hmm.
I'm not going to venture out there, and they pick that up.
Yeah, yeah.
So the avoidant child will disconnect emotionally, and they will isolate, and they don't
Mhm.
show emotions or needs.
Yeah, exactly. They suppress their emotional needs or any needs, because that could disrupt the caregiver. That could make the caregiver angry. Better not to need anything. Better to fend for myself. Better to learn quickly and to almost get put into an adult being an adult a little too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then we have the avoidant adult, and they
Hmm.
struggle because they don't have emotions. They're very
Hmm.
flat.
Hmm.
They can be self-reliant, or sort of
Hmm.
like the lone wolf. I do myself.
Hmm.
Um, they don't know how to attune to their partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, friend, spouse. They don't know how to attune to them. They just sort of shut out, and they send mixed signals.
Yeah, I was about to say mixed signals, or if they're even in relationships, they can minimize the importance of of connection, because they just that wasn't well, they didn't understand that well from a young age, the importance of connection. But we're made for that. Like, we are interpersonal beings.
Yeah. So I was just wanting to move a little bit, Caitlin, to
Yeah.
some practical things, like in a relationship. What kind of combinations do you typically see, or like if you could
Mhm.
explain a little bit about it?
Yeah, I think everyone's attracted to everyone. There's only three, and there's so many types of people in the world. So you are going to find yourself in romantic relationships, maybe with someone with the same attachment style, maybe with someone with a different attachment style. The way that you're going to see this stuff pop up is your behaviors, and your emotional responses to different things. If you have similar emotional responses, that can be almost as frustrating as if you had completely different ones. It can all still cause attention or something. But in any interpersonal relationship, there's always going to be room for growth, whether you're secure, avoidant, anxious, but they're all attracted to each other. I mean, yeah, I don't think it's just secure attached with secure, anxious attached with anxious. There's a lot of.
Well, one of the things that I'm trained by Dr. Sue Johnson in emotionally focused therapy for
Mhm.
couples, and she says, and she has a book which we'll give you the link. Um, Here's the book, Love Sense. Um, we'll give you a link at the end. And she says that, if you don't have a secure attachment, so if you're anxious or avoidant, that by being attuned to your spouse and being present, we're going to talk about like how to develop it. The spouses can actually heal and become secure. So, I mean, there
Mhm.
is a lot of hope. But, I was thinking of a couple that I saw them for a very long time, and he was very avoidant, and then she was very anxious, and so he would avoid her, and she'd be triggered, and she'd get anxious, and then she would sort of like poke at him to get his attention, and he said, I'm not doing any of this. I'm not going to show any feelings. Part of that was, I don't know what his parents did to him, but I know he had an older sibling that beat him up a lot. So he's
Mhm.
just like, you know what, I'm not gonna show any emotion, because if I showed emotion, my big brother's gonna like pound me more.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And by the time we're adults and entering into romantic relationships, into these interpersonal relationships where we're making these commitments, we've lived so many years with the ways that we have learned to cope, have our coping strategies, the way we learn how to behave, the way we learn, our responses and things like that. And when you enter into any relationship, that will be confronted, changed, growth, because this person who you're falling in love with, or entering into a relationship has learned their own coping skills and their own behavioral management and their own emotional regulation, where some of those might contradict each other. Some of those might come really well alongside each other. But it will take time to take what has worked for you and adapt that to this new relationship. And I think that's what attachment, knowing that about ourselves, it gives us that place to start from. Like, okay, because I have recognized I have a secure attachment or avoidant attachment or anxious attachment, I have this place to start from, to know where to grow and how to engage and meet the needs of my spouse or my partner, meet the needs emotionally of them, meet the needs to understand their behaviors better. It does take a lot of engagement when we start looking at these kinds of things, but it actually can be so enlightening and freeing in our relationships. And now it can't be an excuse. I think that's a big thing. We could be like, oh, well, I'm just anxious. Any of those personality tests, any things like these can be pushed off that way, right? Like, oh, well, that's just my avoidant behavior. I want to do that myself. As somebody who identifies with this, I just want to push that off, but it's not important for me to change. But in any relationship, change will happen.
So we had a couple of questions here. I wanted to address them. One is, how can we test to know our own attachment style? So we have at the end of it, we'll give you a link for the that, so you can do your own assessment and be enlightened.
Wow.
If you click on it, this person will send you like a little bit more information, and I think she has a Facebook page as well that you could, if you feel like you want to know more about it. And then do we tend to be attracted to people that treat us similarly to the way our parents treated us?
It's a great question. Go ahead, Patty.
I was going to say that a lot of times it's familiar, not consciously, it's unconscious, because a lot of times we're like, we are never going to be attracted to someone like our mother or father. We're not going to do it, but somehow in a subconscious, it's familiar. So from that point, I would say, yeah, we could be, but I don't know what you think. It's a great question.
Yeah, I was almost thinking that same thing. There's going to be a familiarity that's unconscious, probably, that would at least attract us to somebody who has a similar, may have a similar upbringing, may have a similar cultural background, may have a similar, or we may sometimes want the opposite. You're just really looking to be told, like, you're beautiful, and your father never told you that. You might look for the man who's going to tell you that, but then all their other qualities could be just like your father. They just happen to be able to say, this one thing that was really important for you when you were looking for a relationship. So, yeah, I think, and over time, as we engage in relationships and get deeper into our committed relationships, our desires from our partner grow and change and evolve. What we wanted when we were 20 and met looks different when we're 40 and have, kids in the house, so our parents may pop up a little bit more later on in life too. Unconsciously, we didn't realize, like, yeah, we were, attracted to similar qualities.
Yeah. So, okay. So now, do you have any other examples of where you see the different attachments in relationships, or even as an individual when they show up?
Yeah. I have, an example for an avoidant, of a client who, had a very loving home, very, respectful, raised appropriately, had all the basic needs met, of food and sleep and a house over. They had good education, all sorts of things, but was a very emotional child. And we do a lot of genograms at work. So that's just doing generations and studying the generations and kind of what are the patterns passed down from generation to generation. And knowing this client's patterns with the families, that her her parents were both, grew up in more, dysfunctional homes, that her parents, their whole goal was, we just want to provide a better stability. And that meant providing, that meant, having the basic needs met. But they were not even taught how to emotionally engage with their child, and then they have this emotional child who has all these emotional needs. And, and so she's kind of learning, that she began in her caregiver relationships to kind of avoid and self-soothe, play a lot by herself, spend a lot of time outside of the home and just enjoyed being away from the family and didn't mind, one way or the other if they did things together or not. But recognizing now as an adult how that is affecting her interpersonal relationships, and starting to realize like, oh, I don't really want, she's not really wanting to be avoidant, but starting to recognize how that attachment style is playing into her relationships now.
Yeah, that's great. A great example. So a question that got popped in here, is therapy necessary? Can people just grow out of their attachment style?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I don't personally think that people just grow out of it. I think you have to have an awareness, and a desire. I come across people who are just perfectly fine the way they are, and they don't want to make any changes, and they're not in enough distress to say, I need to own my stuff and like, what's going on? Why am I feeling like I'm feeling? I think so that awareness, and then start reading. But, because I could have somebody come to therapy for this, and I can start to bring it up to the light. But if they still don't want it, it's not going to make a difference. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think too. I think you can take these, the assessment, and you can read a lot about attachment, and start kind of engaging and growing with it. I don't think you necessarily right away need a therapist to like hold your hand through the process. But like, as you start learning, you may not recognize all of the behaviors or the emotions, or that it's all tied to this. And I mean, I think we're probably both a little biased about, thinking therapy is important, at certain seasons of life. I would think, as maybe you're an engaged couple watching this, or you're in a pretty serious relationship, or you're just at the beginning of your marriage. Like, I could see getting into, counseling together proactively to look at these things would be so beneficial towards your relationship moving forward. But I definitely think you can do a lot of self-study before even engaging with a therapist in this as well.
So another question is, what kind of therapy is best to overcome like the anxious or the avoidant? And so I don't know that there's a best. In my practice, I use a lot of different modalities, and the one that I think is clinically life-changing is something called quantum neuro reset therapy. So all the traumas, we mostly operate in the unconscious. So all traumas, physical or emotional, are locked into the limbic system. So I used to be really frustrated because, we could talk around in circles over and over again saying you're lovable, you're good enough, there's nothing wrong with you, but they never could believe it. And so in a relationship, they'd be reactive and stuff. By doing the QNRT, or the quantum neuro reset therapy, I found it to be extraordinarily beneficial. So, but that's, that's my outlook in life. I don't know how you, in your practice, what you do, Caitlin.
Yeah. I think, again, attachment theory is a foundational piece in therapy. That a lot of therapists will integrate it into whatever modality that they are using, because it is so foundational and just a beginning place to start understanding why a person does what they do. So many, I work primarily with addiction. So many of them will come in and say, I don't know why I keep drinking. I don't know why I keep using drugs. And we can begin at, well, let's just do this assessment. Let's see about, your relationship patterns, and, because everything with our clients, what they need moving forward is kind of a clear-cut program, but how to take care of all the stuff from the past. Attachment theory can be very helpful for them to kind of understand how they got to drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism, is understanding their past. And I see, attachment as a great foundational piece of that to get them started and understanding themselves and growing.
So I think the awareness is the first part.
Yeah.
And saying, oh, wow. I mean, that's a big light bulb that goes off when they say, oh, wow. And then depending on how motivated, sometimes they need, especially I think in the inpatient, it's good because they're getting a lot of help in a lot of different ways to kind of keep them looking at themselves.
Yeah. And I think even after some of you, if you choose to take the assessment, you'll have a strong one. Like I test secure, like when I take the assessments, but I see the way I can be avoidant in these relationships and anxious in some of these other relationships. Not really anxious too much, more so the secure and avoidant, but I see the ways that, and that starts with that awareness, and seeing the ways that it's popping up in my therapies.
So, and I think with a couple, and this is like, how do you help a child or your friend or your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, like how do you start developing that secure relationship? And it's feeling, that you're available for that person. This little thing here is like going to be the death of marriages and relationships, because people are so distracted that it's really, really, really hard for people to be present and be available.
Yeah, that is a number one place to start with your child, with your partner, is to be available. What does that look like for you all? Do you set aside a consistent time? I have a client who is a single parent, and they have to work. And so there is a pressure for them to show up for each of their kids. But we talk about the consistency. Do your children know every Tuesday night can be dinner together as a family? Or do they know going into just a week, how they're going to expect your presence, and what you can give? It's so much about communication and talking about these things. So being available is big. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I think particularly for a single parent, I mean, my goodness, they're working all day and they have to cook and clean and shop and for their children. And so it's not in, a quantity, it's that quality, like you were saying, every Tuesday night it's going to be pizza night.
Right. Something like that. Yeah.
And and I'm going to listen to you. And, I just think of the single parent just being exhausted because it's day in and day out. And
yeah, exactly. It gets tough, but there's definitely, your children can definitely still have secure attachments for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. But that being available, even and in romantic relationships too, another way to start, kind of growing in your attachments together is this idea of these kind of go together, but like not interfering, but kind of having this behind the scenes support of like encouragement. And, but again, that takes the communication piece too, to say like, I really want to try this, or I'm thinking this, or I'm feeling this. How do you encourage that exploration for your partner as opposed to shutting it down or minimizing it or disregarding it? Or, how do you engage with that? So kind of.
So, that, right. So, and I just think that available stuff is so important. That, like the couple, whether they're, both working, that they have 18 children or whatever, that they make time for themselves and they put away their phones, turn off the TV, maybe they go get a cup of coffee, maybe they go have a drink on the back porch. I don't care what it is, but they spend that time being with each other and available, because that's real. I mean, we only, if we only ate once a week, once a month, we would not be very healthy. So,
yeah, good.
And the next one is to encourage. And I see so often that makes such a difference. If you want something to be repeated, is to encourage and say, wow, great job. I love that.
Right. If we remember that secure attachment is that ability to engage with a partner, but also have that desire to explore and ability to explore. That's what that is, that encouragement. Like, you're going to be here, we're going to support each other, but also like, go try that new job, or, even try this new recipe, instead of being like, oh, that's stupid, let's stick with tacos, just encouraging and all the different things. If that's something they're excited about that day, we're so quick to shut down and minimize because we're tired, or, all sorts of different things. But just starting to add these things, the being available, the don't interfere, the encouragement, sticking up for one another, just starting to add those in little by little. It builds that trust up again, and starts to create a secure attachment for you and for your partner.
Yeah. That sticking up is so important. I just see in my practice when the other one like sticks up and whether it's the children's being sassy to the mom and the dad says, don't talk to my wife that way, or you made a big mistake and the person says, let me go and talk to the person. I mean, that feels great.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
So, okay, so I want to put up the link for the assessment so you can see it.
Yeah.
Let's see, is it coming? There it is. Nope, that's not the right one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
There it is.
Yeah.
So that's we want to have that, and that's going to be somewhere that you can copy it down. Okay.
Yeah, and even if you Googled that in, that's one of the first ones. That's the one I've done personally as well. And then there's a resource that we have as well, this book called Attached. Oh yeah, perfect. There's the website and what it looks like.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah.
A lot of information.
Yeah, this book also has one that they recommend as well. So.
Yeah. So, okay. So if what we have talked about tonight resonates with you, I recommend first that you start taking the assessment, reading books, going online. The internet has tons of stuff there for you, so that you can live with this, you can build that secure attachment. Because I guarantee you'll feel a lot better about life. You'll have healthy boundaries, and you're comfortable in your own skin, comfortable in your relationships.
Just start looking at why you're doing what you're doing. There's sometimes behaviors that we're like, where did that even come from? And it may come from our attachment style. And, we've learned that as a coping skill for a long time in our life.
Yeah. It's hard to teach old dogs new tricks.
Yeah.
But it's possible. I see lots of change in people, and so there's great hope.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to end this on, just having a lot of hope by understanding this part of each of you and who you're whatever relationship, whether it's a child or a friend or a spouse or a romantic partner, it makes a difference.
Yeah. And that hope to grow, that hope to continue to learn and become who you are becoming, it's exciting. And that's what I see that in attachment. It's just an exciting thing, a tool to discover, to bring hope.
Yeah. Okay, so I just want to bring up what next week is. So next week on Tuesday, I am at 7 p.m. giving a Facebook Live on is your food poisoning you, and reading food labels. There's all sorts of amazing things that are in our food that we don't even know. And so I would love for you to join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a great show. Okay, so I want to give a special thanks to Caitlin.
Yay, thanks for having me, Patty.
And of course, and then thank you for all the listeners for listening in. If you feel like somebody wants to share, you want to share this with somebody, feel free to do that. You can go to my Facebook page, which is Holistic Healing Atlanta. So there it is on the page there. If you want an appointment, you can go through the email, phone, or my my web page there. If you want an appointment when you're ready. Caitlin's going to be opening a private practice. Not yet.
Hopefully in the fall. Yes.
In the fall. So if you feel like you really resonate with Caitlin in the fall, you can contact me, or we have your information there. Either me and I'll put you in contact with her, or whatever. So
yeah.
Thanks for listening in, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.